So let's go ahead and meet Chris. As you can see, he's based out of Chicago, Illinois, currently the Director of Engineering at Backstop Solutions Group. And Chris will go into a little bit more detail on Backstop, but just really quick, it is roughly a 6-year-old company, and there's about 50 employees there right now. Because it is a fairly small group, Chris states that he wears many hats at Backstop, which I think a lot of us have felt for. And skipping down, he is a father of 3 boys and likes to play bass guitar. So with that, Chris, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, and we'll check it out.
Sounds good. Okay, so thanks, Morgan. So as I mentioned, I just wanted to spend some time talking through how we use Atlassian as well as some other products to achieve what we want to achieve. We are a Chicago-based, 50-person company, and we do web-based software for hedge funds and people who invest in hedge funds. We're a privately held, 6-year-old company, and to date we have been profitable, which in the last year in the hedge fund industry has been quite the challenge. But it's been fun. We have, sorry, give me a second. We have a few products that we spend our time developing. The first is called Backstop PM. It's a J2EE application that does customer relationship management as well as partnership accounting for hedge funds and folks that invest in hedge funds. We have another product which is Rails-based called Investor Bridge, and that is essentially a CMS content management system that lets our customers create their own marketing websites. Most hedge funds, although you wouldn't necessarily know it from the Wall Street Journal, they're typically small businesses that have 4 to 6 employees. They're often run in a pretty lean manner, and so we help them essentially outsource their web development. Then additionally, we have a third beta product that we don't have a name for yet, which is a text processing application that does some digestion and analysis of emails sent around the hedge fund industry. We generally release new products every 18 to 24 months. We have a staff of about 25 engineers, and between the 3 products and also trying to roll out new stuff all the time, we're quite busy. So it's important for us to have good tooling and also for us to run in as agile and lean a manner as we can. So I'm going to talk through how we use Atlassian tools as well as some others to help us do that. Again, we're agile, about 25 folks do the software, and we have 2-week iterations to production. So at this point, I'm going to switch over and hopefully switch my application here so I can do this. All right, cool. I'm hopeful that everyone can see a browser window with Omega Investment Partners.
Yep, it's there.
Okay, perfect. So this is what Backstop looks like. This is our J2EE Backstop PM application. It is a fairly standard CRM. In this case, we have a guy named Red Agro. As you can see, is a wealthy dude. Red is actually a real person. He's our test data is all loaded with NFL Hall of Famers, although this isn't his real account. So Red, our fake Red, is a wealthy guy. He used to work in the oil industry. Now we're going to try to get him to invest $2.5 million in one of our products. We can see that he already does own some products with us. I'll switch over just to give you a sense of timeout. Anyway, you would be able to see essentially the investments that Red has in our company. So some of the tools that we use to help us kind of track all this stuff. The first is internally built. It's called Skynet. It's a Rails app. And essentially what it does is it manages all of our test servers and test branches. We run on a 1 branch per story methodology. So essentially we're running 1 trunk we use subversion. We have 1 trunk, and then each of our projects is branched off of trunk for development. So we're managing at any given point in time between 100 and 150 different branches, each of which relate to a specific story. Skynet helps us coordinate all that. This is a homegrown app. We essentially keep a list of servers that Skynet is aware of, and Skynet knows how to deploy the application to these servers and get it set up. As we go through this, we'll start to see some sort of Atlassian infection of the stuff that we do. So, of course, since we're doing one branch for every issue or story that we're running, we start to see JIRA IDs referred to pretty frequently throughout the process. So in this case, it looks like our server name, Dan Catlin, is running the branch related to the FB4220 story. If I wanted to deploy out a new story, these are just kind of a subset. I could grab this one and then bring it out to some server. The server would then start and let me start to do manual testing. I can also, with this application, track each of the branches. As you can see, at least last night when I set this up, we had 129 currently active projects. And I am going to scroll down just to get a handle. So these are, again, all of our JIRA issues that relate to branches that are for our projects. If I zoom into one of those branches, what we see is the details of how the Skynet application has seen this. So this issue information is populated straight out of JIRA using the JIRA for R plugin, and we can also send a comment straight to JIRA from here. We use Hudson for our builds, and this application calls out to Hudson just to let essentially know if this particular branch is building successfully. And then we can also see each of the test runs that we have done as we sent our automated testers against this branch. If I were to click on one of those test runs, then I can sort of drill in here and see exactly what's happening on that test run. So in this case, it looks like we had, on our kind of basic product tests, we ran 54 of them. They all worked. One feature that we have in our application is the ability to send blast emails, which in hedge fund land would be like account statements or notifications maybe of investment directions or trends that you see. And we had one of our tests failed there. And then finally, we have a set of machines that are out there running our automated test tool, which is Squish. And this is where we can see our sort of like Squish statuses across the group. So we have a set of machines that are just enslaved to Squish, waiting for things to do. And I can see down here there's one guy, he's actually out there running some tests. I guess I should mention one thing that's sort of interesting from a process point of view, or like kind of like our domain, because our customers are typically small businesses, and we've had the luxury, I guess, within our space of being able to be fairly choosy about what we develop and who we develop for. We actually only support Firefox as a browser, which makes our automated testing life, among other things, much easier. So that's sort of how we view the testing world. There's a little bit of Atlassian JIRA in there, but it's pretty much homegrown stuff that we use, as well as Squish. As we go further in the presentation, we'll start to get closer to some of the Atlassian tools, but right now we're on the periphery. Another tool we built in-house is called the Snow-later. In our terms, the SNA, which you can see referred to here, is an MD5 hash that tries to uniquely identify a given exception that's thrown out of Java. The SNA it's a Simpsons reference and also an acronym to stack trace non-unique hash. So we know that that it's never going to be completely unique, but our goal is to make it unique enough that we can tell when an error occurs. So I actually ran this against production last night. So yesterday we had a total, I'm going to scoot over here to the left just to give you a handle what this looks like. So yesterday we had a total of 17 exceptions thrown out of production that were this exception. That exceptions occurred a total of 222 times. The first time we saw it was on a virtual machine. It was running this particular branch, FB2940. So I can tell essentially immediately, oh, this error I'm almost positive was caused by a change that happened on this branch because this unique MD5 exception occurred for the first time on that branch. We also track the snug code for bugs that we see in production using a custom field in JIRA. And so this application queries JIRA, I think, every minute to essentially query everything that has that custom field set and then links them to snubs we know about. So for example, like this guy, he has a bug report filed in JIRA, whereas this one actually does not. So it's an error that our tools are detecting, but no human has really done anything with it yet. If I drill into to this exception, this one that begins with 877, we keep a log essentially of every time it occurs. I can scroll down to the bottom, and in this case, we can see that this is the stack trace that explains that error. So then, switching views over to JIRA, we see that same snug code is here, and so that's how we tie that particular exception that was thrown out of the application to an actual bug report. So in this case, we see that there's a human being has either discovered this on their own or got it. So in this case, you log into a client and they essentially get your repro results here. So that's what the snullator does for us. Additionally, another thing that this does is as new errors are occurring, as we're testing each of our branches, the application posts information to snullator, which then posts information to JIRA. And so as new bugs or new exceptions are detected, we actually throw comments on the JIRA story, the JIRA issue, and we're probably going to change this to do subtasks instead, because our goal is essentially every new SNA or exception that occurs, we want and expect our developers to essentially explain it. So here's a new exception that we saw in this test branch, and we're internally in the midst of switching over to JBoss 5. So here's an error that was caused by cache region names being different. So as a bug on our side, we fixed the bug. This is an example of a new system error down here where my cursor is. This is an exception that was thrown, but at least the developer hasn't explained why. So this is the kind of thing where we would hope this wouldn't turn up in production and be traced back to this upgrade, because there would be some explaining to do essentially if that happened. So that's the snullator. And that's it for the internal homegrown tools I'll show. We use a tool called HelpSpot, which is a commercial tool for our email processing and also for all of our help desk stuff. So if you email support@backstopsolutions.com, it's intercepted by HelpSpot, and then HelpSpot provides a nice web-based UI to essentially manage each of those cases. Interestingly, HelpSpot is also what Atlassian uses. This also has some integration with JIRA. So in this case, our CEO emailed us a bug report, which is always not a good thing to happen. But he happened to be using Backstop on his BlackBerry and caught an error with it. So he essentially mentions this error. And what we can do using HelpSpot, they have integration. I'm just going to roll down. They have a push request functionality, and I can add an additional comment here, and then when I click push, a new JIRA issue is created with all of this stuff pre-populated. So we know it's from Jeremy. We know what client he's with, which is us. His description comes in there, and then JIRA reports back with enough information to set all of these fields within HelpSpot. So what this does is this lets our support desk, essentially push new bug requests, new bug reports into JIRA really quickly without any retyping. One thing we want to do is to close the loop on this, so that once we have an issue tied from HelpSpot to JIRA, we get that JIRA information populated into HelpSpot, so that ideally we'd be able to see that while the customer did send in a bug report, maybe we have it fixed, and it's currently waiting for release. We just don't have that done yet. HelpSpot's a nice tool, though. I would endorse it. Then we have a daily process where we use JIRA to triage all of the new bug reports that have come in during the day. So these are basically all the things that were reported by clients and escalated out of HelpSpot into JIRA. We go through each of them on a daily basis and essentially sort of sniff out trends. So we look for new features that are causing problems, or sort of like day over day things we see again and again, in order to get a sense of where we might have sort of hot spots in the application that are known to be buggy. And then we also keep our eye out for issues that are showstoppers for clients or that cause them serious problems, and of course we address those really quickly. We do that with a maybe I'll just follow one of these and see if this works. Hoping for some luck. So here's a bug. And at times, maybe I'll switch back to, say, this one. So in this case, this is an example of what support does. Once they've triaged an issue, we actually score it on a set of different criteria. So this particular one has some system availability and stability impact, but it doesn't really impact the client's investors, doesn't mess with data integrity. There's kind of a workaround. We can usually reproduce it. It's not a new feature that goes into the dev trough, and it is linked to HelpSpot. So using that support score, then that sort of informs us what the priorities are among all the issues that we see in triage. We also use JIRA for what we call incidents. They're given the JIRA project name of, it's an incident, but the abbreviation is TPS, which is kind of like a backronym for trouble in the production system. This actually used to be a Word document that you had to fill out if you did something that brought a production or beta system down. You actually had to go write in on a white piece of, a white physical piece of paper explaining what you did wrong and why it won't happen again. And for a while, it was kind of charming to have to do it on paper because it really, it's all the more disincentive to bring down production when you have to experience the shame of going and asking for your form and filling it out. We eventually realized though that we wanted to have a long-term archive to be able to do some reporting and so on off of these, and so we considered writing an application to let us track these, but we realized as we were sort of working through what we want the application to do, that basically JIRA with some custom fields would do pretty much everything we want. So in this case, we're looking at a production incident that led to a restart on one of our production-facing servers. Again, we use linked issues in JIRA so that we can tell exactly which software change led to this production incident. But here we used actually really a whole slew of JIRA custom fields that let us sort of summarize all of the stuff that's relevant about the actual outage. So in this case, what's interesting to us is basically how did we find out about it? Did a client have to tell us? Did we tell ourselves through alerting? Essentially, how did we know? How did we recover? What did we do to make sure it doesn't happen again? In this case, we temporarily took out the links that were causing the trouble. And then this also is used by our support team to produce a consistent message back out to the client, so that we're tight as far as that goes. We track both downtime and bad time. So in this case, for those of us that are Java developers, we know that when we're in a garbage collection loop, the application will be fine and then get worse and worse and worse and worse. So we track something called bad time, which is where the system isn't down, but it's sort of not really as optimal as it should be. In this case, we took 6 minutes of bad time and 4 minutes of downtime on one of our production servers. So in this case, we actually amazingly altered time and actually got our changes implemented before we were notified about the problem, which would be kind of weird. But anyway, so that's how we use JIRA for that. So then what we do additionally, and this is where FishEye starts to come in, at least at a presentation level, we also review any changes that we've put out to our production environment. And this, again, trying to sort of bring it back to Agile. I sometimes feel like, at least in our implementation of Agile development, it's really hard to get bugs back into the feedback loop. There's an assumption that you're getting stories and customers are giving you feedback, and because you're talking with those customers all the time, like you never ever put out bad code. And in our situation, like we're a very small privately held company. We have had to be very nimble in getting software out the door, and at times like our bugs are not related to code that is new. So what we've tried to do is essentially explain when we have bugs that are so severe that we have to actually patch out to production to resolve them. Each one of those is reviewed by essentially all of our management staff to try to figure out what went wrong. This is something that we'd probably like to eventually put into either JIRA or Crucible, but we're just not there yet. But in this case, we just essentially look through each of our bugs and try to figure it out, try to find a theme. So like themes that we've seen in the past, one of the tools I mentioned earlier is the snow-later. So like this is one where this bug happened in production, and then it turns out as we investigated the bug that one of our tools actually told us that this was going to happen. It told us that it happened on beta, and it was ignored, and it turned out to hit us in production as well. We had 2 bugs that week that were both related to comments that were, to-do comments in code, which is pretty embarrassing, so something else we would want to look for. So at this meeting, we actually have JIRA up and also FishEye. So in this case, here's what this story looks like in JIRA. And then using the FishEye tab, and this is sort of like one thing that we wish we could maybe change about the Atlassian suite. Because we run one branch for every story, I guess the way FishEye is internally designed, the branches are fairly expensive to create and maintain. So like while we use the Fish integration on JIRA, we can see here that actually it times out as we read it, because we just have like so many branches going with so much stuff. Once we do have FishEye up, then we essentially review the chain set and go here into FishEye. And this UI is kind of tough, I guess, on a smaller screen, but we just, like you'd expect, or look through the code and say, golly, like what happened in this code? And in this case, we found this big old to-do sitting here that essentially gave us like a precursor of the warning or of the error. So that is it. Just wanted to give kind of a brief kind of half-hour overview of how we use JIRA and FishEye at Backstop. I should also mention maybe a little bit more about FishEye. We use it probably in all the ways you'd expect in a development shop. It seems like it's a tool that there's only a couple ways to actually to use it. It is super helpful for us. I think the only thing that we found as sort of like a learning experience was, again, its methodology with one branch per story is just it doesn't quite fit today. And I know that Atlassian knows it, and they're reacting to it. So I'm going to hop back over to my presentation here to kind of give a sense of directions. So we have some to-dos internally. I've got of course, a more than sinking suspicion that a lot of our pain in these branch per story methodology is related to subversion and branching in general. It's just not a lightweight operation. So we actually use Git for our Rails applications, as you might expect, but we're also considering using it for our Java app. We use JIRA to an extent as more of a bug tracker than as a Agile story card equivalent. We don't use Greenhopper today. We have the luxury, I guess, of all being in one big room all together as developers, and so we literally have colored pieces of paper that we move from part to part on the wall. And that's worked out okay for us. Although, printing all that paper and taping it up and moving it around and letting it get a sync with JIRA is kind of a headache. So I'm sure we'll switch over to Greenhopper, just haven't done it yet. I'd also mentioned, we're continually trying to tune our FishEye installation because it's totally integral to our development process to get it to be more performant. We're going to start to create new JIRA issues for new errors or SNUs. So again, a SNU is like a unique exception we saw in production. We're confident enough in our error detection at this point that I'm pretty ready to just start to auto-create JIRA issues for those as they occur. Same thing for things that are detected on regression tests. So when we're regression testing a branch, and we hit a new exception, that's almost always something that's going to hit in production. So we should explain those as well. And again, because we use branch per story, FishEye has a lot of information that could be really helpful for us. We just haven't been able to figure out how to get it out. So for us, like a concern we have is branches that are dead. So if you recall, as I was showing the tool that lets us show all of the branches that are outstanding, we have like 126, I believe, outstanding dev branches as of last night. Not every branch is being actively worked on. In fact, there's a really good chance that some of those branches are just sitting out there, taking up capacity, taking up a database instance, and being attacked by automated test zombies for no good reason. So it'd be cool if there's a way to like have FishEye say, here are all the branches you have, and here are the ones that haven't been committed to in a week or a month. Additionally, and I believe you might get this with Crucible to an extent, sort of like known danger points, like basically where are the places in the code that have been production patched most often. You can kind of back into it, but because we're bringing dev branches into the mainline as well, it's hard to always tell what's being changed because it's a bug fix versus what is a new feature. And then because we're running, again, branch per story, if I'm working on a Java class and you're working on a Java class, like eventually we're going to have to merge, and it would be really awesome to know like where those merge conflicts are going to occur, or at least where they're likely to occur. Now, I mean, obviously you can't. I guess you could. It'd be pretty onerous to track every single changed file and every single branch against every other equivalent in every other branch. It'd be pretty computationally expensive, but it would be pretty useful to do that, at least on a certain set of classes for us. So that's the type of stuff that we plan to build out over the next few weeks or months. So that's all I've got. I'm going to close with just a quick pitch. We're hiring, so if you know Java or Ruby and you are in the Chicago area and you like what we do, drop us a line. So at this point, I'll turn it back over to Morgan and be ready for questions.
All right, thanks a lot, Chris. Let me just pull the slides back over. And yeah, as we said earlier, if you have any questions, please chat them in the GoToWebinar control panel right there on the right side. And we'll go ahead and get those questions answered. One just came in. How do you like Squish? I'm assuming you are using Squish for web.
Yes, we are using Squish. We're using Squish for web. We like it. I think that there are things about it that were a little unique and took a little ramp-up time. But in general, as a tool, we're pretty satisfied. We're a Firefox shop, and their mainline right now doesn't support Firefox 3.5, although we have a dev build that does. So we get good service from them. The tool is pretty cool. We're also looking at Selenium. We use Selenium for our Rails apps, and we're considering switching over on the Java side, but haven't really decided yet. Okay.
And here's one about JIRA. Do you have any comments on useful custom fields in JIRA?
I guess it sort of depends on.
It looked like you guys had.
I guess it kind of depends on the business problem. As far as field types, I don't think we use anything that's really all that unique or exotic. I guess I need to know more about the question.
Okay. One thing I saw on Skynet, there was a blog to JIRA button. Does that simply just does that open JIRA and the comment pane, or what is that? How does that work?
It does a JIRA for our web service call.
Okay. All right. Here's a question. What led you to choose branch per story as opposed to CI and putting everything in the mainline strategy?
Good question. So we used to be a kind of like more standard CI shop. CI is continuous integration, so it's like often implemented with a tool like Cruise Control or Hudson or I believe Bamboo, right? Right. So what really kind of drove us to a branch per story was we have a set of features that we write on our platform at our discretion. So they're just like things that we want to do. We also do some features that are bespoke or custom for specific clients. So maybe there's a client who needs to, I guess at the risk of diving in too far, like manage something about their hedge fund in some way that we don't currently support in our software. So we'll take that on as a custom development project on behalf of that client. We always end up sharing the results of that with all of our clients. So it's not like we have one instance of the app for clients. Like everyone sees it once it's done, but there is a client who's paying for that feature. When we were all running CI and on essentially the same branch on Trunk, we had some really serious problems with meeting those client commitments. So we would find that we'd be 3 days away from release, and something would come into Trunk and totally hose it, and then we would essentially not be able to release on time. And again, especially with a customer on the line, that was super impactful for us. I guess I never really explained that we are totally web-based, and so we do deploys really at our leisure, typically twice a week, but clients really expect those things to be available when we say they were. And we just found that we couldn't keep it up when we were all in the same branch. So branch per story it's been interesting. We still have a continuous integration engine. It just runs against our dev mainline. So we do all the things you would expect a typical CI environment to do. Like we track code coverage and we run find bugs and stuff. And we have a huge suite of JUnit tests as well. We just run them all against the main lines. Directionally, I think we'll probably stick branch per story, but doing it in subversion is it's painful at times.
Okay. And then here's one. Are you able to comment on what JIRA version you're on, and if you plan on moving to 4.0?
Yeah, we're on 3.4, I want to say, 3.4, 3.5. We're on the latest version 3s. We're currently testing 4 internally, and we'll move over when we're ready to. My guess is the big driver for us to move will be Greenhopper, and it's just a question of like when are we ready to tear down our papers off the wall and replace them with something web-based. Yep,
sounds good. And then here's one that came in. What was that dev Trough thing all about? Did you custom create that JIRA support tab, or was it a third-party plugin?
Oh, good question. So the dev Trough is it's probably not the most like fashionable or respectful name, but it's sort of like it's maybe a feature request to be the way other people look at it. So it's like, hey, this isn't a bug, and so it's going to go into like the big trough of dev requests that like it would be really nice if someone could look at this at some point in time. And then as we do our release cycle, we end up doing like JIRA searches or HelpSpot searches to look for essentially like where we should be developing in the software next. So we want to keep track of every request that comes in, but realistically they do kind of end up in to an extent in a big old trough, and then we go and pull them out as we go. That sub-tab, I believe we certainly didn't have anyone else do the development for us. We maybe grabbed a plugin to help us do it, but it's pretty stock JIRA as far as I know. The only plugin that we've actually written in-house, and I totally forgot to show it in JIRA, is just there's like the navigation pane on the left side. It's not called an action, but it's something like that. It's a plugin that lets you create a branch directly from within JIRA. So since we're branch per story, one thing that you find yourself doing a lot is creating new branches for a given bug fix or a given story. So we just set up a CGI that calls subversion to make the branch, and then we wrapped the CGI. The CGI is called then directly out of JIRA. I think it's an issue operation plugin. It's the type.
Yeah. And then we did have a few questions regarding HelpSpot. Someone asked if we could talk about that. I know internally we do use HelpSpot. Our customer support team uses it, and I hopped on to their team when JIRA 4.0 came out to help them out with some emails, and can attest that it's a great tool. It was, it's really good for can responses, tracking emails. It kind of makes it like in a Gmail format where you have an email string. It's really easy to route, and it's just I found that I really enjoyed it. You commented on not being able to close the loop from JIRA back to HelpSpot. Is that something you were able to do or not able to do currently?
It's something we're not able to do currently, although frankly we haven't tried very hard.
Okay.
HelpSpot is a PHP application, and I don't believe that it really supports extensions. Like there are sort of like known exit points in the application, like that request push to JIRA is an example. Like there's a sort of API equivalent call that it makes out of PHP, and as long as you give it a PHP class that has the right methods, like it'll put whatever you want in that little drop down. And then once the issue is created, once the JIRA issue is created, it can accept feedback from JIRA into its database, and then if you hover over a JIRA issue link, it can make a call to JIRA to pull in and essentially populate like a little hovered div, but you can't do any reporting off that information, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like basically, so when you're in HelpSpot, you can hover over a JIRA ticket and it'll say, oh yeah, this is currently in development or it's tested or whatever, but you can't actually like pull that information back into HelpSpot to do reporting, which is what we'd really want to do, like be able to say, hey client, like you submitted 10 requests, of these 7 were fixed within 3 days.
Yeah.
So we can't quite do all that, but we honestly haven't tried real hard either.
Yeah. And then also, I guess just on that current integration that you do have, going from HelpSpot and being able to open a support ticket within JIRA, how difficult was that integration to do? Because we don't currently do that, but I know our customer support team would love that.
Yeah, we should put that up on the plugin exchange. I mean, it's like one PHP class, 30
nice.
lines.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely would like to get our hands on that. I think that'd be great. All right, and then here's a couple more questions. What do you use to measure code coverage for automated tests? Does FishEye play a role?
FishEye doesn't play a role in that today. We use Corbatura.
Okay. All right,
and then we haven't looked at Clover, honestly. We probably ought to at some point. Just haven't. We're for as much as we look at code coverage, I would say Corbatura fits our needs, but there's probably more we should do there.
Yeah. All right, and then will you consider open sourcing the simulator or Skynet? Yeah, we consider it. It's something that the applications were extremely purpose-built, and so I'm a little skeptical how much of a community would really be able to get around it, but I think we'd be interested in open sourcing that stuff. There's certainly no reason that we wouldn't, besides just energy. Yeah. Yeah, and we will, at the end of this presentation, we will pop up our contact info so the customer that asked that question could get in touch directly with Chris.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah. All right, here's one. What sort of metrics do you use to judge release quality? I see you had some custom dashboards. Do you try to set up any JIRA dashboards?
We haven't set up any JIRA dashboards to do that. So when we look at release quality, we look at the success rates from the automated tests in Skynet. And then all of our, I should say all, there are some stories that we essentially just do a code review on and put out. Like those are typically like text changes or things that are bug fixes that are extremely focused. We also do a pretty good amount of manual testing. I think we run like one QA for every 4 to 5 developers. So there's capacity to do manual testing. We track via a custom field in JIRA the number of times a given story has cycled back and forth between developers and QAs, like sort of officially handed off between the development team and the QA that's embedded with that dev team. So as we always sort of pay more attention to stories that get cycled back and forth a lot, because that typically means that they're how to say it? If you have like one bug, that's tolerable. If you have 2, like okay, that's sort of weird. If you have 3 or 4 or more on a given story, like that story's probably going to have 5 or 6 or 7. So like those tend to get more attention. We don't have real formal metrics on the overall quality of a release in aggregate before releasing. We sort of like look story by story. And then all of our features sit on our beta system for a couple days before release. And we have some fairly strict policies on that. So like once a branch is reintegrated, it's put into the dev mainline. That dev mainline is run we actually use it, it's what we use internally for our CRM. And then we have 2 or 3 foolhardy and brave clients who also get essentially the dev mainline as their production system, and they provide us with some bug reports as well.
Okay, and then I'll go ahead and ask this one final question, and then we'll move on. Have you looked at Mercurial as an alternative to Git?
We haven't, actually. I mean, I know that Git's kind of like not the only distributed SCM in town. I guess Git's kind of probably got the brand recognition, and so that's where I would be inclined to look. We also have a team. It's not a team that I work, I guess super directly with here internally at Backstop that uses Git, and so since we've got some internal Git foo, my guess would be that we'd go that direction.
Yeah. And then here's just one last comment on that. Mercurial is used by Sun for Open Solaris and the JDK itself.
Yeah, exactly. I know that like Mercurial is like that's some seriously heavy-duty source control, and I know it can do awesome stuff. I'd be interested to kind of flip it around and know, are there any others like similar organizations of similar size, like 25 people all in one room, who are using Mercurial? Because it seems like it's more of a kind of like a big co SCM application.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that'll wrap up our questions for now. We'll go ahead and provide the contact information for everybody. You can always reach me at webinars@atlassian.com. And if you guys have any ideas for webinars, I'm always fishing around for new topics to cover. So if you found this interesting and want more of these, or if you have other ideas, please let me know. And just, email me, reach out at webinars@atlassian.com. Of course, you can reach Chris at cbrown@backstopsolutions.com, especially getting in touch with him about open sourcing some of the products that he demoed. And as I said earlier, this webinar is being recorded and will be made available at atlassian.com/TV. And we also blog the videos, so if you're following our news blog, you'll see it there. And just one last slide, some upcoming webinars we have. On the 19th of November, we have another plugin of the month, and that's going to be on the Vertigo SLA plugin for JIRA. And then on the 10th of December, yet another plugin of the month webinar is the JIRA connector for JAMA contours. So check those out. You can always follow webinars, conferences, partner trade shows, any type of events we have at atlassian.com/about/events. And with that, Chris, I want to thank you. Thank you for taking the time to show us how you're using our products and all the integration points. That was awesome.
My pleasure. Thanks.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye.